for the life sciences here in New York City. And so a lot of people, you've heard a little bit about my background, and I get the question all the time, what is a life scientist doing working in local government? And what I can say is that I'm originally from Wisconsin, and I came to New York City to do a PhD in genetics at Columbia University. And I specifically chose Columbia because it's in New York City. Growing up in the middle of nowhere, Wisconsin, I had always dreamed of actually coming to this city. And I know that I'm also not alone in that. I sometimes feel like I have the easiest job in the world because I want to try and convince people and businesses to come here. And that interest is generally already there for them. And so I'm really taking all of my experience from academia, from tech transfer. I worked for many years for Orrin Hershkowitz at Columbia Technology Ventures, who I'm sure many of you know, as well as an entrepreneur before joining the team at EDC. And so, to get started, I want to actually tell you a little bit about our organization from a top, 50,000 foot view level. New York City Economic Development Corporation is really the primary engine for economic growth for the city. We invest in programming, in infrastructure, and talent in a lot of different areas to be able to make New York City a competitive landscape across many different sectors, as well as grow the talent pipeline, build great neighborhoods and everything. And how we really do that is to ensure businesses and investors really have confidence in New York City. So we've heard from a number of foreign people here today. We oftentimes entertain foreign delegations to try and do business attraction. We also enable equitable growth and development in our priority industries. Life sciences that I'm going to be talking about is obviously one of them, but a couple of others are also tech. We are the second largest tech hub in the world, or in the United States at least. As well as offshore wind and climate technology. We also want to shape and grow the strengths of the neighborhoods. And so we just speak directly with community leaders, community members to be able to ensure that the infrastructure and programmatic elements that we are trying to pursue serves their needs and incorporates what their feedback actually is. And then finally, we deliver future forward infrastructure. And this is really where a lot of EDC works. We administer about 70 million square feet of office space, warehouses, various other infrastructure projects across the city. And so we're one of the primary landlords here in New York City. But we also have non-traditional assets as well that we support, such as the High Line was EDC. We also administer the New York City ferry system and a lot of other really great projects that improve the lives of all New Yorkers. And so from here, I kind of want to take you back in time to tell the story of how New York City, the LifeSci NYC, really got started. And it started actually with the global financial crisis in 2008, when a lot of very smart people in local government, not including me, this is other people. If I see far, I will say that I stand on the shoulders of giants. But back in 2008, we knew that we needed to diversify the economy of New York City. And so we started evaluating a number of priority industries. Obviously, life sciences was one that bubbled to the top that we should be investing in, as we have so many of the elements here in New York that is really required to build a robust ecosystem. We have tremendous IP coming from the world-class academic institutions that have the highest concentration of Nobel laureates. We receive more NIH funding than any other metro, and it's really a robust pipeline of intellectual property to get these companies off the ground. We have talent here with 7,000, on average, 7,000 graduate students that are at any one point in time being trained at the institutions such as Columbia, NYU, Rockefeller, Mount Sinai, Memorial Sloan Kettering, Einstein. I can keep on going because there's so many here. We really have just this tremendous concentration of academic research. We also have the money available. We are a global financial capital of the world. We have Wall Street, many VC offices, and in fact, I think a lot of the venture capital firms that are generally you think of when you think of Boston or San Francisco, they're starting to recognize the potential here and opening up new offices at an increased rate. The one thing, honestly, though, that we didn't have, especially when LifeSci NYC was initiated back in 2016, was the infrastructure to house them. And so companies would spin out of Columbia, they would spin out of Rockefeller, the New York Blood Center, New York Stem Cell Foundation, all of these places. They would have the money and the talent, but they had nowhere to actually put them for some time. And so they would go to Philly, they would go to Boston or San Francisco, and we wanted to actually change that. And so in 2016, the mayor's office actually made a $500 million commitment to LifeSci NYC to be able to capitalize on all these strengths and build out that infrastructure that's really necessary for seeing these companies come here and grow. Obviously, something happened fairly recently. We had a global pandemic that was really unfortunate, but it really underscored the need for life sciences investment and opportunity, especially with such issues with supply chain. And so we shifted our gears to try and develop PPE, ventilators, and really be able to respond to the pandemic and all of its different facets. We also established the Pandemic Response Institute that is looking to make New York City a lot more responsive to any future crises like COVID-19 or anything else. So during that event, the mayor's office recognized what we were doing, how it really contributed to the economy and the growth, and they doubled their investment. So right now we have about $1 billion that the LifeSci NYC team administers. And within that $1 billion, just so that everybody's aware where this money is coming from and going to, we have about $450 million worth of city capital that goes to primarily nonprofit organizations like the academic medical institutes, the patient advocacy groups, the foundations, the research foundations, to be able to build infrastructure and purchase equipment that is really needed to translate some of the basic research that they're doing into new companies so that those companies actually stay here. They're much more attractive to VC investment, and they can actually proceed at a breakneck rate with their pipeline. We also have about $600 million worth of what's called IDA, the Industrial Development Agency. It's a fund that is specifically geared towards for-profit agencies, thinking of developers who actually build the buildings. They're building the incubators, the wet labs, the commercial wet lab spaces that are necessary to house them. But we also can sometimes give to for-profit companies if they are looking to grow and expand here. So if you have a company that isn't in New York City and you're looking to actually expand here, we would love to be able to talk with you. We also have a smaller fund of about $50 million that we can use for direct investment into programs and companies. So we recently announced $800,000 investment in Annika Biosciences in Brooklyn because they were expanding their lab footprint. They want to hire more people, and we want to actually be able to support that directly with our money. And so with all of these three pots of money, we really have the vision of transforming New York City into a global hub for life sciences. That's hard stop. We want to be a leader in life sciences here in New York City. And so we're doing that through generally these three different initiatives. So first off, we want to establish New York City as a biotech hub and spokes. I'm going to show a next slide that's actually going to be an ecosystem map, but we see these clusters that are starting to form across the city, some of which specialize in a specific subsector and some of which are a little bit more general. Each one is generally also near an academic institution so that PIs or postdocs or graduate students can quickly run across the street and do experiments at the company, but also take care of their work at the academic institutions themselves. We also want to build a robust and equitable life sciences workforce. This is a really great priority for us. This is health equity track, and so obviously we want to bring all New Yorkers along for this so that it's not just the PhDs, the high levels that are actually capitalizing on these investments. And I'll give you a couple of examples of exactly what we're doing in a little bit. And finally, we want to achieve a critical mass. We understand that life sciences really thrives in clusters. Think about Kendall Square or Mission Bay. We also want to have something like that so that eventually we work ourselves out of a job. So if I have a job doing this in 15 years, I think that would be suspicious because at that point, the life science ecosystem should be running all on its own without intervention from the government. And we actually set very firm goals for ourselves. So for the infrastructure, we want to develop 10 million square feet of space. Back when LifeSci NYC first started, we had a little less than 1 million square feet, or right about 1 million square feet. We now have over 3.5 million. We want to get to 10 million by 2030. We want to build that workforce. We want to see 40,000 New York City residents participating in this rapid growth. We started with about 8,000 to 9,000 back in 2016. We've more than doubled since then, and we want to get to 40,000 by 2030 as well. And then finally, to achieve the critical mass, we want to see 1,000 companies here in New York City. And we've seen, so far we have almost 400 LifeSci companies within this area, and it's just growing with leaps and bounds. And it's exciting to be a part of this and be able to steer it in the direction that we think is best for all neighborhoods. So this might be a little bit hard for everybody to read here because the writing is a little bit small, but I honestly refuse to apologize for it because it's a map that I'm incredibly proud of. What you'll see is that we have, purple, blue, and orange assets that are forming across those clusters that I was talking about, with the purple being academic, blue being commercial, and then the orange being incubators, accelerators, translational R&D units. And I would say that EDC ourselves, we've actually had we played a role in roughly 80% of the blue and orange dots. So we are really trying to help each one of these assets grow and expand here in New York City. You'll see that what we're calling the hub of the Hub and Spokes program is actually in Kips Bay, which is close to the Alexandria Life Sciences Center. The Deerfield Cure building, we have NYU Langone in the area, a big CUNY campus, a lot of different assets that are going there. But there's also other clusters that are forming that are honestly, in my mind, just as important, including on the Midtown West Side, where we have West End Labs. We have a couple of other things that are popping up there as well. Hudson Square, not Hudson Yards, a little bit south of there in Tribeca, which is where Biolabs at NYU is housed. I actually ran a company that was part of that. Great incubator company that I can't honestly promote enough. And we are also seeing corridors along the east and west side here. So we have Rockefeller, Mount Sinai, Memorial Sloan Kettering, the New York Blood Center on the east side. And on the west side, we have Columbia, where we are right now. Even in West Harlem in particular, we have the Tasty Lab Science building that just opened up. It's bracketed in between Columbia and CUNY, and just a great space to be able to have great collaboration between these institutions. And then, of course, uptown, we have Columbia University in Morris Park in the outer boroughs, where Einstein and Montefiore is, and they're developing an incubator of their own to try and address biomanufacturing. And then also the Brooklyn waterfront. So the Brooklyn Navy Yard, Brooklyn Army Terminal, Industry City, these are some of the assets that we're seeing new clusters popping up that are trying to capitalize maybe on a little bit lower rent that you wouldn't be able to find necessarily in Manhattan. We want to offer opportunities for everyone across the spectrum. So whether you can afford a high price point of Class A lab space, or you need to actually extend your runway a little bit, we think that we have something for everyone. So I want to give you a couple of examples of some of the projects that we're actually doing with this $1 billion massive investment. So I mentioned actually the Tasty Lab Science building over here on the left that is being administered by the City College of New York. It's 36,000 square feet in the Tasty building and should cater to early stage life science and engineering companies. And they really actually are prioritizing accepting companies that come from CUNY or have a diverse founder or diverse workforce, or are speaking at least to increasing equity within life sciences. We have one of my favorite programs that we administer is the LifeSci NYC, an internship program. We've placed over 700 college or graduate or just after graduation students across 120 companies here. Sometimes that's for free. If you have a company, you're looking for internship support, certainly want to connect with us so that we can actually find you potentially some talent that can help with your efforts. But the statistics for who are actually participating in the program are really incredible, with 70% minority, a lot of people coming from CUNY, the CUNY system, and a huge percentage, 57%, that are female, as well as TAP and Pell recipients. A couple of other projects. We actually recently announced a new investment of 700,000 $700,000 to be able to expand the BioBus program. Maybe some of you have heard of it. It's really cool. It's an actual physical bus with a lab inside that goes to these schools and introduces hands-on training to some of the younger, all the way up through college students. And with this investment, they can expand to the Bronx and reach upwards of 50,000 new K through 12 students. These students oftentimes never saw life sciences as a potential career track for them before. And now all of a sudden, I've heard directly from them when they hold a pipette, this is so cool. Like, I didn't know that this was even open to me, and now I want to become a scientist. So really exciting stuff from there. And then finally, of course, I want to talk about a really great collaboration that's been ongoing with Deerfield Management Company, where we actually used some of the IDA funds that I highlighted earlier, and in return, we're actually doing a lot of investment in the programming. So some examples include the Exceed Award that goes to women-led life science companies here in New York City. Deerfield Fellows and Women in Science program, as well as Break into the Boardroom to be able to address the pretty prevalent gender gap that is still persistent within the life science industry. It's really strange. We see that within STEM and the education, women are actually receiving just as many, if not more, STEM degrees, especially in life sciences, than men. But when it gets to those upper echelons, they don't seem to be able to penetrate as much. And so we want to support that group just as much so that we can see equal representation and diversity. I would be remiss if I didn't actually show you some of the incentive programs, because I know that some of you might want to be able to take advantage of them. And so there is quite a list here. I won't go through each and every one of them. A couple that I want to highlight because they are rather new. They just passed the legislative session here in New York State, but we are now going to be offering a matching program for SBIR STTR. Which is pretty cool for me. I'm excited for that. That was one of my passions. I'm glad to see that that's actually gone through, as well as the New York City biotech tax credit that was renewed recently. And so if you're spending on R&D, come to us, we can offset some of the taxes. If you're hiring more people, if you're expanding, there are lots of programs to be able to offset some of the costs. The last one, actually, I do want to highlight is the expansion fund, which is at the top middle. So this is part of our $50 million discretionary fund that I talked about earlier. We just announced an $800,000 investment in Annika Biosciences in Industry City in Brooklyn to be able to grow their lab space, expand their workforce to really capitalize on the growth. And we want to be a part of something like that. If you're interested in any of these, one thing that I would certainly recommend is scanning the QR code. You can come and talk to me afterwards. But one thing that I want to make absolutely clear is that the best way to get involved, to learn about the networking that we're hosting, to learn about some of the incentive programs, what's going on in New York City, is to sign up for our newsletter. It's quarterly. I promise we do not spam you. You won't hear from us very often, but when we do release procurements, new procurements that you might want to take advantage of, you would be one of the first to know if you sign up for our newsletter. And then also, I just want to mention that there has been wonderful participation and collaboration between New York City and New York State, our partners at New York State. And so if you want to get in touch with either of us, we can help you with something like that. The New York State also has a $600 million investment fund. So combined between city and state, we have nearly $2 billion worth of money that's available right now. And we're actually only second in the country as far as incentives to Indiana. So come to New York City, come join us. We're here to be your partners. If you're looking for site selection, if you're looking for incentives, whatever you're looking for, we're here to help. And with that, I will say thank you.